Hey everybody, it's Scuffy coming at you here today, and we are going to be talking about the Iron Hands as the next Legion in our Legion by Legion discussion. So let's get into it. Well, first off, as you can tell, I've got a chest cold, I've got some sinus infection, I've got some antibiotics. So my voice is a little bit rougher, so I apologize for that. This is not working right now. What's the deal? It's frozen. Let's try this again. We'll try resetting it. The flesh is weak. That's the problem, man. The flesh is weak. I feel it. I feel it bad. I was going to talk about the Iron Hands a little bit earlier over the holiday weekend because there was a wonderful special sale for those who missed it. Ferrus Manus Primarch was available in the shop for 1,600 gems for the Black Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I picked them up. I was saving up for them. Thankfully, they kind of gave us some advance notice on that. My thoughts on it just in general, anytime a legendary warlord looks like, that's not going to happen too often. They did it once with the Mandragorax. They did it once with Ferrus Manus as like a special event. So, you know, regardless of whether or not you like him, if you got a Primarch or a Legendary Warlord in the shop, pick it up because that opens up a variety of deck options for you. I didn't want to do an advertisement or anything. It's not what it's about. It's just more or less good timing. And then, unfortunately, I got sick over the weekend, and I'm still sick. But I got to get this out because next week we got the next expansion dropping. And I gotta power through it. I gotta put in my bionic lung and do what I gotta do. So here we are. We're talking about the Iron Hands card pool. Now, the Iron Hands have got some interesting stuff. Before we get into it, we'll talk about Relentless. Relentless is their main key component. Relentless is basically a keyword for at the start of your turn. So there's various troops throughout the game. Primarily in the Iron Hands, but there are a couple that are neutral factions that have got Relentless do something. The Iron Hands were the first to kind of introduce that as a keyword, and they've got a variety of different things that they do at the start of their turn. But the overall theme is get stronger, overpower, flesh is weak, power through it, trudge it, relentless. So here we are, Amadeus Duquesne, going alphabetical. He's actually the expansion warlord, the fourth warlord added to the faction, and he was badly needed at the time. And the Iron Hands themselves as a legion, they've got some good cards, but there's just some components that kind of make them not see play as much, and that's part of the current environment, just not rewarding long-term plot play as opposed to just the fast aggro play. Hopefully time will smooth that over where you can go either which way, but they do kind of suffer from that because the long-term game is really what they're kind of playing. They're building up that board, and he was needed at the time because the warlords at the time, and there's been some changes, hadn't been changed at all, and they were terrible. And he offers the ability to, one, heal adjacent troops, which is big because that's at the start of every turn. That's regardless of what you got, whether it's a front line, whether it's, you know, a guy that you're protecting, a passive, some guy who's just at 1 health and you want to keep him alive 1 turn longer. That's going to work on your adjacent troops. So that's the 2 troops next to him. So troop placement with Amadeus is important. And then also for 1 energy, he gains front line, which is basically meaning unless they've got unstoppable, all the attacks are going to go to him as opposed to any of your stuff behind you, unless you also have additional frontline troops, in which case that's kind of redundant to do that. However, you could do it if you think that one of your frontline troops is disposable or they're going to get through that, then they've got to also get through him. Now, the trade-off with that is obviously he does not heal himself, and he's taking more additional damage, so you've got to rely on some of the other cards in the game and some in the Iron Hands faction to kind of bolster that and make that a longevity type play. But it's a good warlord. His initiative is medium, which actually is good for the Iron Hands. That's probably as good as you're going to get with the Iron Hands, and understandably so. A lot of people like the high initiative, and I get it. But because of their triggers, the Relentless trigger and some of their abilities, having a high initiative warlord on the Iron Hands might be a little bit too overpowering. And that doesn't mean that the initiative system is perfect by any means. That's a discussion for another time, but there it is. So that's Amadeus. So here's Ferrus Manus. Oh, and before I'm going to the collection, because there are some cards I don't have for the Iron Hands. Ferrus Manus was one of those, and I picked him up. Now he's got low initiative. So unless you're facing another low initiative warlord, you are going second every game, and that is a hurdle to overcome, especially with some of the faster decks. However, his ability is very nice. It builds up over time, and it can be used a variety of different ways. So number 1, 2 energy. He's going to give +1/+2 to a friendly troop. That's nice. You can use that on a troop that you've got as front line that you're not doing anything with. You can use it on one that you want to keep alive. You could use it on one that you're going to attack with and just give them a little extra damage as well as health to kind of keep that going for the next turn. It works really good on stealth units or units with sneak attack, because stealth, you can pump them up several turns with that ability if you're uninterrupted and get them very strong to be used. Or sneak attack, you use them and they're not taking any damage when they attack, and then they just go up. Nisar Scouts are probably the prime example of that. You've seen them in some event decks. They come in as a 1/3 neutral, and they've got sneak attack and stealth, and your next turn you pump them up to a 2/5 and they attack, and if they don't kill him on their turn, he's now a 3/7, and maybe you throw some other stuff out there and it just becomes annoying. So that's a good ability. Now his Reckoning has been massively revamped. Initially his Reckoning was terrible. His Reckoning form was terrible. Currently his Reckoning is he loses 1 cost off of this 20 cost card when a friendly troop dies. Now initially it was 20, and it might have been 18, but I'm pretty sure it was 20. And it was -1 when that's a wrong number. Who is Lisa and who is Lauren? I don't know. They're not me. It was -1 when an Iron Hands troop dies. So you had to play an all Iron Hands deck, and they had to kill 10 of your Iron Hands in order for you to use your Reckoning. As you'll see, I mean, the Iron Hands are not cheap. They're not like, if you're just throwing out cheap Iron Hands to get his Reckoning, then you're losing already. And his Reckoning then became, when he is Reckoning, and it's slightly changed, is he gains Relentless. He loses his ability to buff up troops. He gains Berserk, meaning he has to attack every turn. And he gains Relentless. Your attack increases by 1 every turn, which is awesome by itself, you would think. But if you don't have any troops on the board because you've thrown them all to the wind, then you're standing alone against whatever they decide to throw at you. So now his Reckoning is, and it's been changed slightly since, is in addition to the Berserk, in addition to the attack going up, he also recovers 1 health. So he's slightly regenerating. Now he did have recover 2 health, which was better, if you ask me. But there are other ways to heal the Iron Hands, so it's understandable why they kind of wanted to pare it down some. But I think that should still go back up. I don't know if that's totally fair yet. Gabriel Santar is another low initiative Iron Hands warlord. Now his ability is kind of interesting. He's a 2 energy. He deals 3 damage to an Astartes or infantry troop, or 2 to another unit. So he's kind of like a strange hybrid between Abaddon and Loken in a way. He has 3 damage. That's across, that's your standard 3 damage infantry Astartes. Okay, it's not going to do anything to vehicles. It'll do 2 to structures, 2 to vehicles, but it's also 2 to warlords. So it's kind of that cross combination. The downside is obviously no additional card advantage, and the low initiative is very downsided. On the trade-off of that, if they throw down troops early in the game, you can decide to chew them up with his ability if they're low health enough, and that's not going to cost you too much. Doing 3 damage to infantry or Astartes, that's pretty significant. That's pretty lethal for most of the early to mid-ranged cards. So it's a good ability. It's the low initiative is really kind of what hurts it, if more than anything. Now, Shadrach Medusan is also has also gone through some changes. I don't know if his initiative has been changed. I believe that's still the same. So he's a medium initiative. He gained Survivor 5. He didn't have that before. Or did he have it before and it just didn't show up on the card? That's been changed too. He might have not had, I don't think he had Survivor to begin with, but he has Survivor 5 now. His ability was also a 2 cost at one time. Now it's a 1 cost, which makes it cheaper, and it gives sneak attack to a friendly troop this turn. That doesn't seem like much on the surface. However, when you really think about it, especially late game, or even, middle of the game, dropping a goldstone, giving him sneak attack, and then having him attack for free, hidden, taking no damage, and then still being available the next turn, or on some of these Iron Hand troops who can get their attack and their health up beefy, it really draws the board out. It really draws the board out, and it keeps you going longer, and it makes them target your troops as opposed to your warlord, and that buys you more time. And Medusan is I don't know if he was, I hate to talk on lore without really knowing my shit on this one, but I don't know if he was at the Drop Site Massacre or not. I think he was, and that's why he has Survivor, but he basically leads the Shattered Legion in guerrilla warfare tactics, which is why that thing kind of goes with him. He's sneak attack, and he's just drawn out the war front. So that makes sense. And if you want to correct me if he was or wasn't at the Drop Site Massacre, feel free. I don't mind. I'm legit not 100% sure on that. So let's get into the cards. The Bionic Eye is actually one of the first cards that was introduced to the game, besides the mechanic things. It was a tactic for Legion specific to all friendly units, or heal 2 to a friendly unit, all enemies lose stealth. That's all enemies, and that's 1 energy. And a lot of people go on and on about the Raven Guard, and the Raven Guard have had some changes, and this is a 1 energy answer to Raven Guard. And it also heals. And people say, yeah, but then you have to play Iron Hands. Well, play what you want. I mean, every Legion has got an answer to something, and if they don't, they use the neutral stuff. If you don't want to answer stealth, there's other ways to answer it via damage, random damage, front wall, front line. There's ways to go about it, but this is a good card. I don't know if it's a 2 of in every deck, but I like to include 1 in most decks just because it's a heal, and it can go on your warlord. It can also go on a troop. And, the illusion stealth is an added bonus. So Furio Squad, these are guys who are really cheap, and they go good in cheap decks that like to, start out small, like a Ferrus Manus mass infantry, or very similar to the Leader of Legions event decks that you might have played if you've played the events. These guys start small. They're a 1/3, so they can be easily killed. However, for 1, they're dealing 2 damage. That can go to a warlord. That can go to anything. It's not specific to a unit. Over the course of a couple turns, that's pretty nice. And if you can keep them on the board via pumping them up with Ferrus Manus' ability, or by protecting them with Amadeus Duquesne, you can really start to control the board early game, which is good because you want to have control of the board for your bigger guys later on. Power Mace is a tactic, just really basic. +2, +0 to a friendly troop. Nothing super powerful. It's Legion specific. And hang on a second. I'm going to pause this really quick. I got to blow my nose. That's just terrible. I don't want to look like a fool. Okay. Recording has been resumed. Well, I tell you, Nurgle has come this year to me and my lungs, and it's not pretty. I don't like it. Let's get this out of here. Come on now. Come on now. Get going. Run. Get out of here. I'm just trying to dismiss this. I'm just trying to dismiss it, man. There we go. That's better. Sorry. Apologize. Technical difficulty. So Power Mace. We were talking about Power Mace. It's nice to hold if you want to pump up the guy's attack by +2. It's decent in events. I would pass over it in the event decks. There's a lot of other ways. Or not in the event decks, I'm sorry, if you're building a deck for the Iron Hands. There's just a lot of other natural ways to power up your guys without utilizing a card spot. Heavy weaponry is kind of the same, and this is +0 to friendly vehicles. +2, +0. That seems nice for a cost of 2, but most vehicles are going to be expensive, and if you're playing an Iron Hands deck right, they're gonna naturally do damage or not need the buff or gain buffs other which way. So better use of card cost. I wouldn't include those. Now Terric Squad I like. Obviously they're an epic rarity. 2 damage, 3 health, 2 cost. When they come out, they deal 2 damage to a random enemy, and then at the start of every turn, they deal 2 damage to a random enemy. These guys become targets really fast, but if Ferris can pump them up, if Amadeus can protect them for a couple turns, again, it's random, but it's free damage as opposed to the squad that you're paying 1 energy. It's free and it's spread, and it just puts the pressure off of your warlord. So I like those guys. If you can squeeze them in, they're great troops to drop early game for sure. Now the Storm, I hate the Storm. I hate the Storm. It's a terrible card. Now, and there are people who have stories that they've played the Storm, you know, and won the game because of the Storm. It is a use or lose card. It's the design behind it is, the intention is basically your troops gain front line, survivor 1, and enemy cards cost 5 less until your next turn. The intention is basically you make your opponent drop their hand, however much that is, and then you've got, you know, then they're playing with the top deck, and you've got hopefully some additional cards left on the board in addition to what's in your hand. The problem is you can only play it in that situation where your opponent only has like a couple cards in hand, or you've got a lot of cards on the table that you don't mind giving frontline to, as well as the survivor, because if they're ones that you're protecting, then you give them frontline, they're targets. And this cost stacks with other cost reductions. Now that's the thing to keep in mind. I had somebody play the Storm on me once, and then I played Spirit of Mars. So then I got 3 additional cards that were subtracted cost of 2 in addition to the cost of 5. So I just got 3 free cards basically, in addition to the other cards I already had in my hand. And to go with that, Spirit of Mars cost 5 less. So I was only paying 2 energy to get that effect. 2 energy for 3 free cards. It's not a good card. For its rarity, it is not. If it was rare, okay. You know, maybe they're going off of the amount of text on this card. The story behind the Storm, and this is just one thing I will share. The story behind the Storm is interesting. Basically, the theory between the Storm is, you know, the Iron Hands were fighting a bunch of orcs during the early part of the Crusade prior to the Heresy, and they teamed up with the Imperial Legions, and you know they landed on side and they encircled the orc encampments, and they basically had all their regiments out there, all the humans out there, and then they just bombarded the base and really riled the orcs up and got them all mad and just got them all to come out, the ones that survived the Storm came out of the trenches and charged into the thick of the Imperial troops. And then that's when the Iron Hands dropped the hammer, which was themselves, their entire legion just dropped right into the middle of that. And the orcs that had survived that Storm then were just subject to the unrelenting fire of the Iron Hands, and they chewed him down that way. And that's where the hammer comes in later on. That's another card, and that's nice. You can combo those if you really want to, but it's an interesting Iron Hand story. Doesn't make for a good card. That's my 2 cents. Urlach Squad is a good front line. I like 2 of them in a deck. It's cheap. It's a common. It's a 2 for a 1/5. These guys are gonna survive at least a turn. And if somebody's blowing a destruction card on them, then that's not a good use of a card, but I like Urlach Squad. I do not like Varric Squad. I do not like Varric Squad, and I'll tell you why. They're 1 health. That's why. Even with the Iron Hands offering pumps, even with a guy with Amadeus Duquesne protecting him, even with the chance of upgrading him with Ferris Manus late game, they're still easily killed. They're still lethal. They could take a ricochet is going to kill them. Artillery strike probably is defensive satellites. Your seek and destroy, your Abaddon effect. These guys are you're throwing 2 energy out the door, if you ask me. Now there is an event warlord currently that can give these guys a drop pod, and that will protect them. but then they just do 4 damage, and then they go away. They don't stay on the table. They don't even have any table retaining abilities. Just pass those guys up. They're not. There's better 2-cost neutral cards than there is for this, if you ask me. Banner Squad is nice for some decks, not for every deck. It's a 3/3, but it's got a tutor ability. It draws a vehicle from your deck. Now, if you're going to build a deck with Banner Squad, camera falling. If you're going to build a deck with, hang on here, adjust technical difficulties for the Omnissiah. There, it is better. It is fixed. Proceed. Thank you. Banner Squad. Today is just not my day, man. Oh, and did we freeze? Did the game freeze? Yes, it did. Son of a... See? This is what happens, man. Mother F's. This is what happens. You try to overcome the hurdles of illness for the sake of knowledge. My apologies. Banner Squad. It's got a tutor ability. It's actually one of the few troops to have a tutor ability, if I recall correctly. There might be only one more. Because this is drawing from your deck, this isn't creating a card on its own. You don't want to include them in every deck. However, if you do include them, take a look at the vehicles that you have in your deck. You can choose to utilize them with cheaper vehicles to get out more troops from your deck quickly, or you can use them to get that big, epic, heavy tank that you want to, kind of rely on and build up protection and put the hurt on your opponent. They're not bad. They're not for every deck, but they're good for decks with vehicles if you want to build with that thought in mind. Sistar is really good. Sistar is the only other legendary for the Iron Hands that I have, and he is getting you an additional card with his Relentless ability, and he's reducing his cost. Now, he has to survive a turn for that to happen, but again, with Amadeus and with Ferris, that's very doable. Not so much as doable with Santar Medusan, but he becomes a target. But at turn 3, he might survive a turn. If he does, you got a free card with a cheaper cost. That's great. If he survives longer, that's even more. And if you can throw Sistar down, and then the second turn he survives, and then you throw down Jubok, and then your opponent has to decide which one to go after if they can't kill them both, that's good times. And then you get a card at the start of your turn, and this card at the end of your turn, and then a card, and it's just... It's fun to do that way. Eutropidus. Now, this is a nice guy if you can keep it alive for at least one turn. His Relentless is very basic. He gains a +1/+1 every turn. If you can drop an escape vent on Eutropidus on turn 3, he's not, unless they have got defensive satellites dealing damage, or they have got somehow a reduced cost Scimitar Landspeeder. The Landspeeder from the Raven Guard, you're going to get a 4/4 sneak attack with the Medusan. And then you're going to get a 5/5. And then you're going to get a 6/6. And it just goes up from there. Those guys are really cool. They're really cool. I mean, even outside of Medusan, I mean, that's just a strong card. It just gets stronger. He just gets stronger. I like those guys. Helmick is all right. They're a 3/4. They're unstoppable. There's nothing super special about them. They're common. If you got a 3 cost and you're looking for, to compare it to some of the neutrals, is it worth including? Maybe. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Depends on what you're going for. But they do have unstoppable, so that's nice. Head of the Gorgon. Now, you can give, if you're building a vehicles deck, you could include this. And Flank this is the first time that Flank was shown in the game. Flank is really kind of came to shine with the Raven Guard. But you give vehicles Flank, and then you drop them late and they're in the game if they're higher cost vehicles, and then they can use their abilities or just wreck shop like right out the gate and destroy whatever, supporting cards there are. That's strong. The cost of 3 is tricky because you want to play it later when you've got additional energy to play, because if you're just burning this on turn 3, you're missing the opportunity to put cards on the board early. and really the Iron Hands need to have cards on the board early. They're very similar to the Death Guard in terms of keeping that board like just staying alive and hanging on there. If they can hang on there, they get stronger. That's about where the similarities end, though. Win of the Week. Win of the Week is their Destroy card. This is their Destroy card. Now, this is actually, for its cost and for what it does, it's pretty nice. I don't know if it's quite the best because it's random, but it's up there. It destroys a random troop from each player. It does not have to have your troop in play. It just destroys a random troop. So if you don't have one, you just destroy one of theirs for 3, as opposed to 5, which is the outflank for the Sons of Horus. It's really nice if you use this and you destroy, like with attacks, any other troops that you don't want to use this on, and then use Win of the Week to help kind of get the one that you do, especially if that's the only one remaining, you know you're going to get it. And if you've cut down the odds between 2, then it's really going to work. I don't like throwing them out there unless I've got a bunch of disposable troops on my side. I prefer to use it when I don't have any troops, or like I said, like if I've just got like a bunch of disposable. But it's really good for its cost. It's a good must-have. Darrow Squad. Now these guys are not quite like Eutropius. They give +1/+1 to a friendly vehicle. And that makes for an interesting deck build if you're going that rate. I think their cost is a little high, but they are a 4/4, so there is some damage, there is some longevity to them. But you have to really build your deck right. And I'll be honest with you, from the decks that I've played with and tested and just kind of played around and been goofy, I really haven't come across a solid Iron Hand Astartes to vehicle ratio to really feel like these guys are necessary. I've seen a couple that kind of utilize it, but it's not something to really build around. I don't think. I think it's just too slow with that because so many vehicles are just high cost. Now, Deus Ex Ferrum, I could use this. I could use this right now. Heal 5. Remove the poison. Remove the poison, please. And this is from all your units. This is a great card late game when you've got 3 or 4 things on the board. You attack with them all, and including your Warlord, and then you heal 5. The poison is just a little added trick to it. You know, gets rid of poison. It's their nice little thing to kind of counter that mechanic. Because, you know, if your guys are poisoned, then they can't gain their Relentless benefit. But it's a good card. I don't know if it's a 2-of, but it's definitely at least a 1-of in certain decks, especially in Amadeus. It might be a 2-of in an Amadeus deck for sure. Galba Squad, these guys are nice. Now, this isn't a Relentless ability. This is a when an enemy troop is put into play, they gain +1/+1. So if you can get these on the table and your opponent doesn't have any troops, their priority then becomes to kill these guys before they play troops, or play troops and know that he's going to get stronger, and they're going to have to figure out a way to either stun him or remove him or deal with him at some other point. If you get a Galba Squad going and you've got the board control and you've got more than just one unit besides Galba Squad, or you've got Galba Squad pumped with Ferrus Manus, it's gonna put the hurt on real fast. And again, these guys become targets as opposed to your Warlord. So I like those guys. I like having 2 of them. Medusa and Carapace. Oh, I have this one too. Wait a minute. I didn't know I had that. Maybe I've only need 3. Okay, that's nice. This is an epic Warlord upgrade, and basically gives your Warlord Relentless. Deal 2 damage randomly, split among enemies. So it's only going to do 1 damage and then 1 damage, but it could go both on the same guy. So you could deal up to 2 damage on 1 unit, 1 character, Warlord, vehicle, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just random. If you can get it out early, it really builds up steam over the course of the game, just because damage is damage. And if there's certain turns where your opponent doesn't have any troops down, that damage is going to go on their Warlord. They're going to have to eat free too at the start of your turn before you've done anything else. So it's not bad. It's not quite a Raven's Talon, but it's a good upgrade. Volkite support. These guys are pains in the butt just because of their 5 health, and that makes them have some longevity. At turn 4, that's decent. Their ability, they deal 5 damage for 2 energy to a vehicle or structure which is lethal to a fair amount of structures and mostly lethal to a lot of the vehicles. There are some vehicles that can survive it, but a lot of the early vehicles, a lot of the vehicles that are coming out at turns 3 through 5 are not going to survive that. Or it deals 2 to any other unit. So even if it's not a vehicle, it's going to do 2 damage to a warlord, 2 damage to an infantry. So nice little guys there. Xerxes squad. These guys are okay. They're common. Okay, their ability's okay. When a friendly troop dies, gain +2/+0. That seems okay. What these guys are really good for is not putting out right away. You hold them into your hand, and then if you've got 3 or 4 guys on your turn that you're going to kill via attacking or whatever like that, you throw them down, do your attacks, your suicide runs. He gets stronger, and now your opponent has to deal with him. And again, he's a target, not your warlord. His health doesn't go up. That is the trade-off. So if you pump him up via other health increase cards that the Iron Hands have got, Ferrous Manus ability, or you protect him with Amadeus, he can have some longevity. It's nice, him with Amadeus, because he can actually heal him, and then you can kind of pick and choose which ones you're kind of sacrificing with your lineup with Amadeus, and you could kind of keep him alive. I think I've once gotten him up to a 9. That was kind of a special run, but it doesn't happen too often. Usually you're just going to get 1 use out of him, but you might get multiple uses out of him. Captain Vargas. If you're going to play Iron Hands and you see this guy, you got to have him. I would say between Captain Vargas and Sistar, those are your 2 must-have legendaries for the Iron Hands. His ability is just solid. Obviously, +1/+1 to all your troops. That includes him. And he's a cost of 5, so he's very accessible. He comes out right at that turn rate where destruction cards can happen. But if you can keep him alive for a turn, it's just going to go up. If you've got 3 or 4 other troops that are drawing heat from your opponent that your opponent wants to get, they have to make a choice now. Do I get rid of Vargas? Do I get rid of these guys before they get stronger? Can I get rid of these guys before they get stronger? Can I get rid of Vargas? Is it all too late? Is it for anything? Does it even matter? Why am I playing? That's what they'll ask themselves. So I say Vargas, yes. I would say he should go in every Iron Hands deck. There's no reason not to. He's a solid card. If you can get him, pack him. Corvan Squad. Now these guys have a higher cost for their health, but their rally is very nice. Rally deal 3 damage. I've seen these guys used to end games. Deal 3 damage right to the warlord. That's what it can do. Boom. That's it. Take out that last unit that was going to make a difference. It's an automatic seek and destroy. That's what Corvan Squad does. That's what they do. So that's not bad. That kind of counterbalances their cost. I don't know if you'd include them in every deck, but if you're looking for decks, then you want to kind of figure out a way to how do I do damage. There's one option for you. Rapier Laser it's pretty good. If you can get these guys out with like an abandoned supplies or even cheaper with the captured forge, which we'll look at here in just a sec, their ability is just, I think there's maybe 3 troops, maybe 4 troops that can survive that attack. And if they do, then you're just going to throw something else at them. And for 4 energy, basically you're destroying an enemy troop. That's pretty much what this does. It's just straight boom. Like its attack and its defense are okay, but you're not attacking it with it. You're using that as a defensive to just do this massive damage. This is one where if you can get this out and your opponent doesn't have any troops on the board and they lack an immediate response to it, board control is almost assured. Unless you goof up or you overblow your damage or you target the wrong thing. Rapier Laser is solid. These guys are also solid too, actually. These guys, they don't do 8 damage to a troop, but they do 5 damage for less to anything. That includes a warlord. Ralph Squad is very good. If I had to choose between the Rapier Laser and the Ralph Squad, it depends on the build. Like if I was trying to go with the vehicles and using Amadeus or using the Bandit Squad, maybe, but I do like Ralph Squad. They've got the same attack, Their health is a little cheaper, but their ability is cheaper and their damage is across the board. And that's good. You guys can get these guys out again. Paying for damage without having to attack it means that your opponent has to attack these guys. They have to attack them, or they're going to eat damage that you don't have to give up any health for on your turn. Servo Arm is kind of the key. It's kind of the key for a couple of the, I would probably say 75% of the Iron Hand decks. Maybe 90%. Oh, okay, it could be 100%. I mean, it's just, it gives your Warlord Relentless, heal 2 to a friendly unit. Doesn't seem like much. Every turn, 2 additional health on something, whether that's a unit that just barely survived and you are keeping it alive for 1 turn longer. That's a front line that they didn't do any damage to. Or it's your Warlord, who is the only one left, and maybe you've kept it that way for a reason. Or maybe all your guys are fully health and that's the only choice to heal. And then maybe you have 2 of these on your Warlord. So now he's gaining 4 health back every turn. Every turn. Wow, that's... Yes, its cost of 5 is up there. And if you play it right, that's nothing. If you play it right with these guys, long term, you don't have to drop it out turn 5, but if you can, early on, it'll pay dividends. If you can't, late game, it's still going to heal you a couple. The key to countering Servo Arm, and it's not guaranteed, is to damage their troops. If you can't kill them, damage them, and that at least might break the cycle, because it's going to be a random who is it healing to. But that's not the best way to go about it. Just try to kill them, and if they've got that much health coming at them, just put this on a Reckoning Ferrus Manus. He's healing 3 to 5 every turn. Plus his attack is going up. That's nice. And that's not counting any other cards that he's playing in his hand. That's just stuff that's on him. That's just guaranteed. So Ancient Brantar, this is their Dreadnought. Their ability is costly, but their attack is high. Their health is high. And their ability is not bad. It doesn't do damage. It destroys. Destroys a vehicle or structure. It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter if you're protected. It doesn't matter what your ability is. You're going to be destroyed. So that's not too shabby. I usually get these with the Captured Forge effect. I don't normally play them or pack them. But, you know, they're not too bad. The ability's kind of high cost. Like if you had to choose between Brantar and Rapier Laser, I'd go with Rapier Laser. But late game, Brantar hidden for 6. Gotta like that. This Racken Dreadnought. This guy here. This guy is the better version, obviously. Same cost. Attack starts out a little bit lower, but his health is noticeably higher. And then his Relentless ability as he gains attack. And then it just goes up from there. And if you can pump him up with Ferrus, if you can keep him alive for a couple turns, then this 5/7 quickly becomes a 7/7, an 8/7, and just, you know, if you're healing him too, if not, he's going down in health. But that's a heavy swing. That's some big damage. These are the heavy closer out cards of the Iron Hands. Those two, and then you'll see here we got a couple other heavy hitters. You don't build around them. You kind of game them. You kind of throw them down. You're building around that early board control. At least in this current state of the game, that's a requirement. And then these guys basically, your opponent has just spent all their attacks and everything that they can on your little cheapy dudes who become powerful, and then these powerful dudes who are already powerful come out and just like mop up. Now Captain Kagos, he's got a very good ability. He's a front line, first off, which is nice, especially around turn 6. It's kind of nice to be protected. And then he heals 1 to all your units. That's all your units getting healed. Man, I'm going to have to blow my nose again. I don't like it. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to fight it. If you can get these guys, if you pair it up next to Amadeus, you're protecting Amadeus. They're healing Amadeus, and Amadeus is healing him. That's a nice combo. Captured Forge. Now, this is an effect that we kind of mentioned a little bit here. This creates 3 random Iron Hand vehicles, which is these vehicles in this Legion. in your hand, and they cost 2 less. That's a decent effect. If you played your game to the point where you've depleted your hand around turn 6, or you've only got 1 card left in your hand turn 6, this gives you 3 more cards to your hand, which are going to be fairly affordable on your following turn. The trade-off is that 6 energy. If you're playing it on turn 6, you wanna hope that you get good stuff, because it's random. You might get the high cost stuff, you might get the low cost stuff. Even the low cost stuff isn't shabby, don't get me wrong, for Iron Hand vehicles. But you're basically have a turn where you're at your opponent's disposal if you don't have anything on the board. So you do want to play that carefully. Don't just throw it to the wind. Now Ferrum has high cost, 6. It's probably one of the highest costs aside from Spirit of Vengeance and Pride of the Emperor direct damage cards, but it deals 5 damage and 2 to the adjacent units. That's pretty solid. I don't know if it's a 2 of, it's at least a 1 of in most of the Iron Hand decks that I put in there, just because that damage is just 5 damage is going to kill a lot around turn 6. And even if you don't use it for that, you can use it for the splash damage to kill the other things that may be stealthed. You may want to kill up to 3 with the effect. You might just want to do 5 damage to your opponent's Warlord and kill one of the units or 2 of the units that are adjacent to him. It's a pretty solid card. Fall of Garandil, that may be a 1 of. Maybe. It's a guaranteed 4. Now the trade-off is it's damage to all units, so that's going to affect your guys too. And that can kind of hurt if you've spent some time to try to build up your board. But at the expense of doing 4 damage to all your opponent's units, which could vary between what they've got on the table. That could kill everything they've got. It could leave some things exposed. You don't have to play this right away. You could attack with everything that you've got, do massive damage with whatever you can, and then throw out the 4 to finish it off. And then it's a clean slate on both sides. Except maybe it's turn 10, so then you've also got 4 additional energy to play. That's possible. My daughter's in gymnastics and she's doing good. That's good to hear. I don't know if you'd build a deck around that concept, but I'd say it's a good working thing. You know what? And just as an aside, like if you really want to be, a Ferrus Manus chump about it, you throw that down when you've got a table full of militia, and you drop your reckoning by 6. It's a little silly. I wouldn't do that, but I mean, it has its uses. Not that he did it on purpose. He just didn't. The flesh is weak, man. The flesh is weak. They can't keep up. They can't keep up. Get out of this crusade. Gosh darn it. Marlock Terminators are the 7 cost, so they're 1 higher cost than the Venerable Dreadnought here, but they are not a vehicle, and they heal too. As a Relentless, that's nice. And you throw a Ferrus Manus ability on here, and they become stronger, and they're going to heal themselves, and they're just going to get lasted longer. You can manage to sneak attack with Medusan on these guys late game. There's no way that your opponent can, without throwing their big guys at this guy, take him down for free, and then he's just doing 6 damage. They're a good closer. It depends on what you've got, if you want to include them as your closer or not. You don't want to throw too many cost 7 cards. The thing with the Iron Hands in general is they've got a lot of good cards, but they're high cost. And that's why Captured Forge, as you'll see, some of these are vehicles. Captured Forge is actually better because for the cost of 1's card slot, you can throw 1 Captured Forge, but then you gain 3 additional vehicles at reduced cost. So in terms of like card economy in your deck, that's a good option. Predator Executioner is an example of one of those vehicles that you can pull. And its ability is cheaper than... is it cheaper? Yeah, it's just cheaper than... No, it's the same cost. But instead of vehicle or structure for that guy, it's any troop. And he's got an attack of 9. I've never used his ability. I've just used his attack as 9, which is nice. His health of 5, okay, whatever. But attack of 9, come on. Why wouldn't you use that? That could be game. That's 9 damage to a Warlord. Come on, use it. So the hammer. Now the hammer has got a nice concept. Again, this is the hammer. This is the Iron Hands dropping down after the storm and just pop, 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 just wading into it and nullifying everybody. Draw a card and deal damage equal to its cost to all enemy troops. Now the catch with that is you want to, if you're including the hammer in your deck, you want to look at the cost of all your deck. You want to go into your deck breakdown and say, on average, what am I going to be drawing? If I'm paying 7 energy, and I'm only going to draw on chance a 3 or a 2 or a 4, is it worth it? If I'm going to draw a 4, then I might as well just play the Fall of Garandel. And granted, that affects me too. This gets you a card. But if you've got a couple 7s or 6s, and you run the chance of drawing the hammer with them, that's not too shabby. But it is a chance. It's random. There's no guarantee there. So I think it has more use than the Storm. I don't know if you would combo them really or not. I mean, you could technically, again, depending on those rare situations where they've only got a couple cards in their hand or one card because they're going to draw a card on their turn. You play the Storm. You've got some guys out. They just drop their hand, and then you play the hammer. And if you're lucky, you draw a good 5 cost, and it kills all the stuff that they drop for free. And then you've got 3 energy left on your turn. But it's it's iffy. You have to really look at your deck if you're going to include it. Now, Ironfather is very high cost. He's got some good stats, and his ability is actually a rally. It's very similar to the Captain Kagos, not Captain Kagos, to Captain Bargas, but his does not affect him. This is your other Iron Hand troops, and it's only your other Iron Hand troops. It's not going to affect your infantry, your Mechanicum troops, your Imperial, or any Chaos. If you're throwing Chaos in your Iron Hands, it's just not going to happen. But it is nice as a late game, as a rally, boom, it's a +1/+1 on all your guys. Would you include it in every deck? That's up to you to discuss. Thunderhawk, 1169. Now, this is a higher cost. We're getting to these high cost cards that are like really just like a one of, or do you do something with it? This ability is a nice ability. Puts a random play, or into play a random vehicle from your deck and give it flank. But you got to build around it. You can't just play it willy-nilly. If you've got junk vehicles or cheap vehicles, if you're going to pay 8 to put in a 4-cost vehicle for flank, that's not enough. If you're paying 8 to put in a 7-cost executioner with flank, okay, that's all right. If I'm going to pay the flank and I want a vehicle that's got a cheaper ability to use, or I want an ability that has like a massive benefit, and some of the best one, and granted, again, this is just building a deck and being goofy with it, but this guy here, if I'm paying 8 and I can get him for 1 turn cheaper, I've got a Cleave 5 guy coming down. So not only can he attack with his 5/9, but he's got Cleave 5, so he's going to do 5 damage to 2 other units potentially. That's probably, I wouldn't say the best buy, but that's one of the best buys I think that you could get with that. But you got to build the deck around that. And the problem with that is what if you draw those guys into your hand at the start of the game, or before you get Thunderhawk, or before you use Thunderhawk? Then your whole concept is shot. So it's nice. It's not guaranteed. It's not comfortable enough to feel good, in my opinion. But it has potential. That's any vehicle. The more vehicles that are introduced in the game via the neutral cards, the more utility that's going to have. So keep that in mind. Venerable Comeback. I've seen him with the again with the Captured Forge, but he's a high cost, and his ability, it just affects him. It doesn't, which late game, it's got to be a friendly Astartes dying, and it's just going to heal him. It would be nice if he healed like 3 to a random. He could be better for that effect, but he is a rare. If you got him and you're looking for a closer, he's okay. I would pass on him. I think this one's better. And this one you don't have to do anything with. You don't have to attack. This Relentless, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. Attack of 6 is good. It's a very good defensive attack, and the health of 9 means if they can't destroy it, they're going to have to throw several cards at it to get rid of it. And then it's just going to deal 5 damage to a random enemy. And if your only enemy on the board is your opponent's Warlord, then every turn they're going to eat 5. One way to counter that is just to spread out, as many troops as you can on the table if you can't get rid of them, to kind of mitigate his damage. Even if you stun a Relentless unit, their Relentless ability still goes off. So stunning them isn't going to do anything. You got to damage him. Then you got to kill him before he can get his ability off. That's just, or you could just do Win of the Week or some other destruction card, but that's strong. And Axlis Astra takes that up one more notch by destroying a random enemy troop. That's your Relentless. That's a solid closer card. It's not something that you put in your deck. Again, this is a card that you could potentially generate via Captured Forge. So if I can put a 6-card cost in my deck and save on the 10-card cost slot, that might be a better way to go. And I've played Captured Forge and actually generated 3 of these guys. Just that's the way the random calculator works. So it's possible. And then they come in at cost 8, so that's not too shabby. But they've got shield, they've got health of 10, they've got damage of 9, and then at the start of every turn they're destroying a random enemy troop. That's power overwhelming. It's not going to do anything to your opponent's Warlord, but that's what the 9 attack is for. I took out your front line, and now I pound you in the face for 9. So that's a good closer. Legion's Pride is an interesting tactic. It is random. Its effect is not too bad, but it's not something to build around. As a defensive, it's kind of like a poor man's, Ornatov's Barge, basically for the Iron Hands. You draw on 3 cards and put in any troops drawn that way and give them frontline. Now, depending on your deck, you could get some good value for that. If you don't do a lot of tactics, you're going to draw troops, and you happen to draw some of these higher cost guys, for a cost of 10, you're going to get, maybe 7 plus an 8 plus a 9, 24 cost verse of cards in play, all with frontline. Okay, nice. That's not bad. But you got to put those in your deck. And that's kind of the problem with that. Now you're saturating your deck with high cost cards for another high cost card. Are you going to even survive to turn 10 to really benefit it? You got to ask yourself that. And that really is when you take a look with the Iron Hands, take a look at the deck construction. Take a look at the cost of them. They're very good early on in terms of building steam. Their closer cards are these higher cost cards seem like closers, but if you build your deck right, these 4s and 5s can be your closers too. And they really can do just as much damage and be just as affordable. And that's kind of the current state of the game. It's kind of forcing that. You might have 1 or 2 cost 8s in a deck. Very rarely are you going to have a cost 10. And especially if you could just replace a cost 10 with a cost 6, Captured Forge. That's a better option. It's not going to give you a troop that turn, but it's going to give you 3 random ones for a reduced cost, and it's giving you more opportunity to put low-cost cards in your deck to draw for. So that is the Iron Hands card pool. That's what we've gone through. We've managed it. I've survived. Barely. So that's it. That's the Iron Hands. We made it. We'll be looking at the Salamanders next. Thanks for bearing with me, bearing with my illness. And I will recover. I will move through it. I will move on. I will get stronger. And that's it. All right. Keep playing Legions. Talk to you later. Bye.